The Arab states is the most affected region by displacement, both internally and internationally. The region accounts for only 5% of the global population, but 32% when it comes to the global population of refugees. This in turn has slowed down its education progress relative to the rest of the world. A lack of paperwork, language barriers, and security risks are the largest hurdles migrants and refugees face in obtaining their right to education. Azaria Tagaya has more from Doha, Qatar.
Almost a third of the world's population of refugees and migrants are currently seeking protection in the Arab states, with 6.7 million of them from the Syrian Arab Republic alone. Despite an overwhelming response in the 5 countries hosting Syrian refugees, however, 39% of Syrian children are still not in school. Director of the Global Education Monitoring GEM report at UNESCO, Manos Antoninis, says that while there is no doubt that the Arab states face a unique challenge in providing an inclusive education, policymakers need to ensure that the policies formulated fairly reflect the needs of displaced persons.
It's very important for migrants and refugees not to leave their right to education behind, because still there are many bureaucratic and other obstacles that prevent some categories of these very vulnerable groups from accessing education. For example, they may be requested in Lebanon, if they don't have official refugee status, some documentation in order to access secondary school. Or there are many parts of even this region, not just the refugees, but even migrants, that cannot access public schools for free. They need to pay in order to have this, to enjoy their rights.
At the end of 2018, there were 25.9 million refugees, of whom 5.5 million were Palestinian. The Syrian Arab Republic was the country from which the largest number of people had fled, while Sudan was also in the top 10. Among the top 10 countries hosting refugees were Sudan, Lebanon, and Jordan. In addition, Lebanon and Jordan hosted Palestinian refugees, making them the 2 top refugee-hosting countries in the world as a share of their population. Most governments provide parallel education systems for refugee populations, but according to the GEM report, this is not a sustainable solution. Parallel systems lack qualified teachers, examinations are not certifiable, and funding risks being cut at short notice. They therefore diminish the chance of refugees being included and leading meaningful lives.
Generally speaking, the good news is that there is a tendency around the world and in the Arab world as well to include refugees and other displaced people into mainstream public education. That is a very important development in recent years, because it recognizes that there is no benefit from keeping refugees in a parallel system from which they cannot find a way to certify their studies and therefore integrate into the labor market and have proper life opportunities. Having said that, ensuring that this inclusion is achieved can be a challenge depending on geography, depending on resources, depending on capacity.
The first regional edition of the GEM report, published by UNESCO, was launched at the World Innovation Summit for Education, WISE, in Doha, Qatar recently. The report analyzes the impact of these population movements on education systems in the region and presents a series of urgent recommendations to protect the education rights of those on the move. Among the 7 recommendations is the urgent need to respect the right to education of all those on the move. Secondly, a need to include them in national education systems and not keep them in separate structures. The report also underlines a need to prepare teachers in all aspects, from addressing diversity to being sensitive to the particular struggles that the migrants and refugees face.
Now, another key finding involves the role of the international community. As Antoninis says, most emphasis is usually given on giving out humanitarian aid, which provides things such as food and shelter. But these are very short term, when in fact more focus should be given on giving out developmental aid, which can provide migrants and refugees with quality education and thus securing a more quality future. Azaria Tagaya, Doha, Qatar.